What's good, everybody? I'm Zach Hayes. Welcome to Hype DC Presents the Weekly Drop Live. Thanks for coming down. And also, thank you, Hype DC, for helping us cook this up and for also hosting us tonight. This is the first of many events we'll be holding with Hype DC during 2019. Now, I'd like to call over our editor of the Weekly Drop, Steve Duck, and also the legend himself, Jeff Staple. So, big ups.
Okay, so tonight we're going to run through just a few talking points with Jeff. I've kind of just organized it as like past, the present, and the future. So I think when we talk about the past, it's very tempting for us to just sit here and talk about pigeon dunks, but I think we've all heard that maybe once or twice before. So what I thought we could do is go back a little bit further to you were working as the art director at the Fader being a big-time music magazine, and you were encouraged to provide editorial concepts as well.
Yeah.
And from there, you somehow finessed a way into Beaverton, Nike HQ, as the art director of a music magazine. Right?
That's right.
Yeah, okay, maybe you could talk through that.
It actually was maybe even a little bit harder than that because Fader at the time was a very small magazine. Like the team at Fader was 5 people, you know, and I was the art director and designer of the entire magazine. But I happen to have a journalism background, so before I went to design school, I went to journalism school. So I could sort of work my way around like a Word document, you know. And there was this story that I wanted to really get across, which was, and this is going back to 1998, so probably before many of you were like able to speak. But there was this idea of like parallel importing. So back then, Nike and all the sneaker brands would release stuff regionally, right? So there would be like a Japan drop, a Europe drop, Southeast Asian drop, North American drop, and they would just do it regionally. And in order for you to get, if you lived in America and if you wanted a Japan shoe, you had to go there and get it. And some people would go to Japan with like an empty suitcase, buy 20 pairs of this like Japan-only dunk, and then bring it back and then sell it, you know? And this is like really the birth of what you guys know now as like Stadium Goods and Flight Club. This is like the early stages of that, right? And so I wanted to know why, if Nike knew that this stuff was happening, this parallel importing, why weren't they just making more of them or just distributing them everywhere, right? So I convinced the publishers of the Fader. I said, like, I want you to fly me to Japan. I will figure out how to interview the people of Nike Japan and get the story of why this parallel thing is happening, why you're making shoes in limited quantities. And it's funny because I remember back then, like, the publisher of the Fader was like, wait, Nike's making shoes in limited quantities? I'm like, yes, they're making shoes in small, like, why would they do that? I'm like, I don't know, that's what I want to find out too, you know, like, this is how early this shit is, you know? And he was like, yeah, he's like, you know how to get the story done, right? Like, you know how to get in touch with Nike. I was like, yeah, I got this. I had no fucking idea how I was gonna do this, right? So he paid for my ticket, paid for my hotel, and I literally just landed in Tokyo, and I just started going into sneaker stores like this. I just walk into a store, and I'd just be like, who gets you Nikes?
Could you speak Japanese?
No, I can't speak Japanese. So I was like a detective just going from one lead to the next, trying to work my way up to the top of the food chain, finally getting a meeting with somebody at Nike headquarters in Japan, and then sort of figuring out and getting that story. And so that story still exists. You can find it online. It's a great story. And that's how I ended up meeting Hiroshi Fujiwara, who's the founder of Fragment, because that guy at Nike said, if you really want to understand how and why we choose which shoes to bring back and which shoes to make limited, you got to talk to this guy, Hiroshi Fujiwara. You know, and that's the first time I met Hiroshi. And I remember, you know, I had to make a photo shoot happen because I was making this magazine, and so I was calling around to different friends who had photographer friends, and I was like, hey, can you help me shoot some stuff and, you know, shoot some stores, shoot some stuff at Nike, shoot some shoes, and they were like, yeah, we'll help you out. This is great. We love the Fader, you know. And then I was like, yeah, can you help me shoot Hiroshi Fujiwara too? And everyone's like, oh no, I can't shoot Hiroshi. I was like, why? You're gonna shoot all this other stuff. Oh, he's the god. Like, you can't shoot the god. Like, they were all scared to shoot him. Finally, I found one American dude who didn't know who Hiroshi was. No, I didn't know who Hiroshi was either. And so finally, like, we made the shoot happen, and we became fast friends since then. And that night after the interview, he was like, hey, do you want to come to my house for dinner? And so I go to his house. I'm not even joking. Like, I walk in, and James Jebbia, who's the founder of Supreme, is like sitting on his sofa. And then out in his backyard, Eric Clapton is like grilling barbecue. He's like, hey, you want a fish or a steak? And I'm like, steak. Hey, James. It was like the most random thing, and that's like the life of Hiroshi, basically. Seriously.
Wow. That was a curveball I did not see coming.
That's life, man.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah. So anyway, I was able to parlay that interview. You know, the guy that I met there, he was like, oh, so tell me more about yourself. Like, you art direct the fader, you have a streetwear brand. You know, I had Staple at the time. You're a big sneaker connoisseur. We should work together. I was like, yeah, we fucking should. You know, he's like, okay, let's arrange for you to go to Beaverton and start meeting some people. And so that's how that relationship started. You know, it was really me just trying to get a story. I wasn't going there seeking a collab. Like, it's not even a thing that anyone would ask for. It's so weird now.
There wasn't really collabs happening.
No, there wasn't collabs happening at all. And the thought of me somehow being able to work with Nike, like in the capacity where like they ask me for something and I ask for money and they pay it, that was like unfathomable. Like, I was just happy. I wasn't even trying to get a pair of shoes. Like, even getting a pair of shoes from the headquarters would have been like a blessing, you know? So for him to be like, like, you should go to Beaverton. I was like, yeah, I should go to Beaverton. I was like, go to Beaverton? That's like, you should go to the Wizard of Oz. You should just meet Oz.
Just go knock on the door. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah,
Right.
and I think within 3 months I was in Beaverton.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and what's the process? Obviously, the Pigeon comes out in 2005.
Yeah.
Prior to that, you had the navigation pack with the lasers.
It was before that.
Yeah, prior to that, yeah. So what's the process from, you know, being in Beaverton approximately 98 to the navigation pack, when was that?
04.
04, right.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's 6 years in between.
Yeah.
Just a lot of sort of hustling and just maintaining the relationship, or what happens in
No,
there?
there's a lot of internal work that was happening. So there was I got, after you go to Beaverton, you sort of get blessed by the headquarters, and then you know, Nike has a lot of regions, right? So then Nike NYC was like, because you're in New York City, we'll take care of you, and like, you know, we gave you work to do, and like, there was like a lot of internal stuff that was happening. So like presentation work, internal annual reports. Like, I remember one assignment, really cool assignments, you know, like one of them was like, Mark Parker was coming to New York, and it's crazy, like when Parker comes into a headquarters, like a regional headquarters, the whole regional office has to like make themselves look like they're doing a lot of work, right? So they'll spend like $2 million on like a conference room just to make the conference room look like they're doing a lot of shit. And so one of the things was like, Jeff, help us design the conference room. And the takeaway materials, the PowerPoint presentation, what do the coffee mugs look like, what muffins should we have catered, like all that stuff, like curate the whole experience so that when Mark comes, he feels like we're doing like a really good job, you know? And so that was one of the projects that we did, and the thing that I did was like, we took their annual report, which typically comes like as a PowerPoint presentation, and I basically relayed the whole thing out into a New York Times newspaper. So there was newspapers sitting on the table when he got there, and he was like, oh, it's thanks for the New York Times. But then as he opened it, every article was about what was going on with Nike in New York City, like rewritten, relaid out, rephotographed, and he was just like, holy shit, you made like a special issue of the New York Times, you know? So that was dope. We also did, I don't know if you guys remember the Nike Air Max 1 Kid Robot edition. There was like 2 versions of that. So I designed the packaging for that one. And it's cool, if any of you ever get your hands on that, like if you look at the barcode of the box, it actually says like Staple Design hidden in the barcode, like in the little UPC. So I like left little breadcrumbs like that. We formed a basketball league for not people who were not good at basketball, basically. You know, I basically pitched to Nike. I was like, you know, you want everyone to wear like Kobe's, LeBron's, and Jordans, but nobody actually plays basketball in these shoes because in New York City, it's really hard to get access to a court. And I was like, wouldn't it be great if like people, it's funny, the word influencer didn't exist yet. So I was like, imagine people who have jobs where like other people look to them for inspiration. That was like the definition of an influencer before the word.
A person with influence.
Yeah. You know, I was like, these people have influence, you know? And what if you gave them basketball shoes, but then you also gave them like a court to play on and officials and an umpire to like, you know, keep stats and everything. And then we imagine if we played the playoffs and the finals at Madison Square Garden. And of course, you know, shout out to a guy named Jerry Erasmi, who's like an OG at Nike. He was like, we should make this happen. And I remember like Fight Club, not Flight Club, Fight Club, the movie was sort of like really big then. And you know, Fight Club, like the 2 rules of Fight Club are that 1, you never talk about Fight Club, and 2, look at rule number 1, you know? So we wanted to create this sort of Fight Club phenomenon where like there was only 100 people allowed into this club. There was 10 teams, 10 people per team. Each team was named after a shoe. So there was like, it was like Team Hiroshi versus Team Foamposite versus Team Air Force One versus Team Terminator. You know, everything was like that. And then we ended up playing our finals at Madison Square Garden. And it was a season-long thing. I think we had like 6 seasons of it. It was pretty special and amazing.
And the trophy. So you were Team Terminator?
I'm Team Terminator, yeah.
Right.
We won 1 year, yeah.
Right. And what was the trophy?
The trophy was a Nike Dunk Low that was made out of basketball leather. And so there was only 10 of them made for the winning team. So if you have one of those, it's a 1 of 10, you know? And that's really, it's dope because it's like, it's really hard to get that done at Nike. It's, you know,
I can
like,
imagine, yeah.
No, but now like I feel like a lot of people get like collabs and like there's a lot of retail SMUs, like a retail store will just get 50 pairs or a designer will just get 50 pairs or like you see like I feel like Jerry Lorenzo from Fear of God, like every week there's like a new colorway that like, oh, I sampled 12 of these, didn't work out, oh, I sampled another one of these. Like, it's like, damn, they're just like handing out colorways now. But back then, getting a shoe done in 10 units was like a major pain in everyone's ass, you know? And they'd be like, why are we doing this? For who? For these 100 basketball players that suck at basketball? Why are we doing this? And there was just a lot of convincing, but you know, thankfully people at Nike really have the faith in stuff that I was believing in. So and this is all pre-Pigeon. Right. It's all pre-Pigeon, you know? So it's funny, you know, one of the criticisms that I hear a lot is like, oh, you just put a pigeon on a shoe and you became big. But it's like, Nike doesn't just let people put their logos on shoes, you know? Like, you have to get to a point where Nike's like, oh, do you want to do something? Like, they don't just call random people, like, cold call, like, hey, you want to do something? Like, so...
This would look great.
Yeah, this...
Air Force One.
Yeah, this right there. Right?
Live strong colors.
So, yeah, I mean, you know, we had done, like, yeah, I mean, wow, I'm staring at, like, one right now. This is the Navigation Air Max 90.
Nice work, man.
Nice. You should be careful with those. I don't know how much longer they're going to last for. I think, yeah, the soul might explode on you on those. Yeah. But no, like that one was great. We did a Cortez, a Rift, the Navigation Pack, the Nordic Pack, like a lot of shoes, and then finally the Pigeon Dunk.
I'm just interested in, it was the Nike Recess League. Is that what you called it?
Federation. NRF, yeah. Nike Recess Federation.
And the other people that were playing with you, is that...
This is where I ask you to donate to this charity that's coming.
Shout out the Hare Krishnas.
Yeah.
Anyway, so at the Nike Recess Federation,
yeah,
you've got 10 teams, 10 people who were OG influencers. Were there any names involved in that league that people here might be interested in?
Wow, so many. Babito Garcia was in it.
Of course, yeah.
There's a guy named Paul Rivera who is now... if you follow the life of LeBron James, you'll see this little Puerto Rican guy that's standing next to him at all times. He goes by PR_roll with the winners, RWTW. So if you follow him, he was in the league. Who else? Like Dao Yi, who owns like Public School, and he won a bunch of CFDA awards after that. Yu Ming, who was the founder of many things, SneakerCon, Freshness Mag, Stadium Goods. He was in it. So, yeah, a lot of, you know, David Jacoby, who has a show on ESPN now. Of course, yeah, he was in it. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Some real OGs.
Yeah.
Now, this, if we go back, this all comes from you just sort of shooting your shot, you know, at the Fader, getting a trip to Japan, opening doors, etc. In the same interview where I learned about the Recess Federation, you also mentioned something called Louis Vuitton Luxe.
Yes.
And for anyone out there that's not aware, LV Luxe is something that, or it's a part of Louis Vuitton. It's a, I would think, not particularly well-known part of LV.
No.
But you worked on an Air Force One, an all-patent leather white Air Force One for LV Luxe. But maybe I feel like everyone here would like to know more about what this LV Luxe is.
Yeah, so LV, this is a Japan thing. So it's like a members-only club that Louis Vuitton has. And LVMH, as you might know, owns like a lot of different brands, right? So LVMH owns like Loewe, and they own obviously Moet Hennessy. So they have like a lot of different brands under LVMH. I think they own Tag Heuer too. Yeah, so they have many different luxury brands under it, and there's only one place in the world where you can buy every LVMH family of brands under one roof, and that's this store in Tokyo called Luxe, which actually, if you've been to Harajuku and the LVMH store there on Omotesando, it's at the top floor of that store, and there's a special elevator. You need a special card that you slide it into this secret door, and then this elevator comes, and the elevator only goes up to that one floor. And in order to become a member of this store, you have to first you have to be, fill out an application form, be selected. There's like a screening process. But then even if you're accepted, you have to spend a minimum of, I think, $50,000 every year there, or else you lose your membership. So you have to keep spending. And there's only like probably 100 or so members. And the members are like, the CEO of SoftBank, the CEO of Toshiba, like so-and-so actors and stuff like that. And the store is amazing. It's like architecturally so beautiful, sits at the top, like they have the longest circular staircase in the world, like the longest continuous circular staircase in the world, because, and I don't know why I'm spewing this out, but, to have a circular staircase, you need brakes for like, you need like a land, like you go up and then you need like a flat part and then it continues up. This is the longest continuous one without any stairs, and it was actually banned by the. You can't do that from like a ADH sort of like safety standpoint. But they were like, oh, it's not a staircase. It's actually a sculpture. So that's how they got around it. And this LVMH was actually a client of my design agency, Staple Design. And so what we were doing for them was curating experiences for their members, because you're talking about 100 to 200 of the most wealthiest, but also the most accessible people on earth, like meaning they have the most access to things. So how do you offer experience to them where like you wow them? And it's very difficult to do, So like, one of the things that we did was, when Star Wars had a reboot a couple of years back, they rebooted.
Like episode 1.
Yeah, they rebooted it for the first time. We flew George Lucas out to screen the reboot to them in a private theater. So like it has to be stuff like that. Like another one was like, all these guys have Ferraris, right? So like, but we curated an experience where like Pininfarina, which is like the customization division of Ferrari, you got to fly to Italy to the Pininfarina factory, and they would hand bespoke make you a Ferrari to your taste, like in person. So like I just had to basically sit there in a room and think of like, if I won the lotto, I would want to do this, And so one of them was like, let's make an Air Force One for them that is only for these 100 or 200 members. Right. That was all patent leather, had the Luxe logo embroidered on the back. We actually worked with Fraser Cook on that to make that a reality. But yeah, those are little things that like people don't really know about.
Yeah, that's why I asked. I feel like when I stumbled upon that, it's quite an old interview when you mentioned it from probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. But you certainly didn't go into that kind of detail. It sounds like Disneyland for millionaires, I guess.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, the stuff that we could think of was just amazing.
Thank you very much for opening the window to LV Luxe, a land that we will never know, unfortunately. Those of us who work in publishing. Okay, so to move forward, we understand the story from meeting Nike and the Pigeons and so on, and various other jobs and collaborations. But currently, if we look at the present, Jeff's really well known for the Business of Hype podcast.
Yeah.
So, does anyone here listen to that? All right. Hey, look, They don't like Jay-Z.
Right.
But they do like you.
Right, yeah.
But initially, I guess, where did the concept come from? Is that something that came to you for? Did you pitch that to Hypebeast? How did it happen?
As with most collaborations that I work on, it happens really organically, and it usually happens over dinner, and this one happened over dinner as well.
Is this why you didn't eat with me earlier? Just to drink.
Yeah,
right,
just to drink, yeah.
Right, I get it.
There will be no collaboration happening at this sitting. No, I'm a fan of podcasts. I don't know if any of you guys are, but I was actually, I was a podcast addict. Now that I'm making it, I am no longer a podcast. I'm like tired of it now because there's so much editing involved in making a podcast that the last thing I want to do now is listen to a podcast. But I used to be really, really, really into podcasts and just consuming them like crazy. And I thought that there was sort of a missing element in a lot of the interviews that I was hearing with people, which was usually like the premise of an interview when you listen to like someone that you admire is like, you should quit your job and follow your dreams. And that's it, right? It's like, okay, yes, I'm inspired to do that. I'm going to quit my job. But then it doesn't go into sort of like the details of like, okay, if I want to start my own brand, how much money do I need? Like, when do I need to call a lawyer? When do I need to trademark some shit? When do I need to open a business account and not a personal checking account? You know, do I need insurance? Like, when do I give my first employee a raise? Like all of these little things, right? And so I wanted to do a podcast where like I would ask all my friends who have businesses and really go into that in-depth conversation about the financials. And I thought that because I'm a fellow business owner, it would be more of a casual conversation versus like a Q&A, you know, from a journalist, right? And so I'm pretty close with the founder of Hypebeast. His name's Kevin Ma. And I had dinner with him, and I just threw him the idea of doing it. He loved the idea. Hypebeast at the time already had a podcast where they were interviewing sort of like young, talented, a lot of musicians actually, and it was called Hypebeast Radio. And so my show was going to be like the second show on that platform called The Business of Hype. And so we started it, first episode. I mean, the first 3 episodes were bangers. I mean, we started it off with Hiroshi. I decided to go back to Hiroshi. Second episode was Sarah from Colette. And the third episode, I think, was Aaron Levant, who's the founder of Agenda Trade Show and ComplexCon. And so starting out with those 3 was huge. And it just set the bar right away. You know, the best quote that came out of that first episode with Hiroshi was I started asking him about his taxes. You know, like he has to pay taxes. And he was like, he said, I remember one time I accidentally saw the amount of money I have to pay in taxes, and I was so scared. I was like, how are we paying this much money just in tax? You know, and he's like, after that, I never looked at my taxes ever again. So I was like, you know, it's great to hear people like worry about their tax. You don't think about that from this guy who's like the head of Fragment Design, you know? And another great insight that he said was like Fragment Design, even though it does all these amazing things, like you see Montclair, Nike, all this stuff, he has 2 employees. And he's like, I'm actually trying to get it less. Like, I'm trying to like fire one of them. But he's like, I just have 2 employees. So all of Fragment is 3 people. And that was amazing to me too, you know? So yeah, so it's been really good. It's taken off now. Now we're over 40 episodes, I think. It just keeps going. And now, actually, unbeknownst to a lot of people, I'm actually now the executive producer for all of Hypebeast Radio. So like, we made a new show called Soundcheck, which is a music show. We have a 4th and 5th show coming now. So I'm actually now deciding who gets a show on the platform as well. But I don't promote that part that much.
You guys can meet up with Jeff after the
Yeah,
talk.
if you want a podcast, let me know, yeah.
If you have any pitches.
Yeah. But I love podcasts. And I honestly think if you guys are not into podcasts right now, if you get into it, like you'll see how it's very different than watching something on YouTube. I think like when you have something in your ear and you're not like watching something and you're able to just go about your normal life, commute, work, whatever, like when the voice is going straight into your brain, like something is triggered differently than when you're watching it on a TV show or YouTube. So trust me, like podcasts hit a different nerve in your head.
All right.
Yeah.
One thing that I really do, it's the first thing that you said about the podcast was that it's a bit more practical. Yeah. So you did an Ask Me Anything episode of the podcast, and he wrote this enormous long question for you, which was basically like, how do I know that I can start my dream business? And there are so many other podcasts or public figures that would be like, yeah, quit your job. Go for it.
What did I say? I don't even know what I said.
You were talking about...
I shoot the shit, so, like, I literally do these freestyles, so, like, what did I say?
This guy had kids and that sort of thing. So you were like, you have to be responsible. Don't quit your job. Think about, you know, whatever it was he was selling. Like, how many of these are you going to have to sell in a day to cover your rent? How much is the rent going to be? And then, you know, how much of that is going to go to tax of the amount that you spend, that you make, and that sort of thing. And
I basically discouraged him from doing it.
Well,
I shot down his dreams. Damn.
Yeah, look, it was cold. No, it was... It was framed in a positive way, but really it was quite refreshing because, like I said, so many other people don't really offer that.
Yeah.
That's a point of difference that you have with the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also your access to talent, because you've had everyone, like you're talking about Hiroshi, you've had Jerry Lorenzo, you've had Yoon, you've had like anyone you could think of that's
Another good one is John Wexler. Right. So not everyone that I interview started their own brand. Some of them are like company dudes. You know, like two that are really surprisingly popular was Yassine Saidi, who was the head of Puma Select. He's the guy who got Rihanna for Puma and, you know, The Weeknd and everything. And John Wexler, who many know is like the guy who netted Kanye West for Adidas and is largely responsible for like the whole comeback of Adi, you know. And so he started like, he was like doing events for Adi, you know, like just managing events. Yassine from Puma, he was selling tennis socks for Puma. So how do you pivot from like you're selling tennis socks for Puma to meeting and signing Rihanna for the brand? Like, and he walked through like all the steps. So it's not all about like, not everyone is fit to like start their own brand, but a lot of people, in fact, the majority of the people are probably like, I just want to like believe in a brand and then do what I can to help that brand or that company. And so it talks about, you know, that perspective as well, which is really dope for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I'm sure in this audience there's probably like 10 startup streetwear brands. No laughs. Just you and me, bro. But yeah, I'm sure they'd get a lot out of it. But having said that, what do you think you have personally learned from the experience that you've had of interviewing so many of these amazing people?
Probably the fact that social media is really fucking shit up for a lot of people. Because what happens is like, when I started a brand 20 years ago, there was no social media, right? So the fact is that now part of owning a brand or part of doing anything is not only the operation of the brand or the company itself, but it's also how you show and perceive the success of your brand to the outside world. Whereas before Instagram, that wasn't something that I had to worry about. Like when I started Staple, I didn't have to worry about how Staple looked like it was doing to the outside world. I was fully focused on the business at hand. But right now, as you know from image consultants or influencers, and even if you have a brand, it's all about like, man, if I rent a car, I can't just rent the cheapest car. I have to rent this fly whip so that like when I'm doing the selfie, people see the BMW logo, you know? Because like if I'm flying coach, I can't take a picture that I'm flying coach because then people will know I couldn't afford a business class ticket. Like these are things that like these kids have to think about nowadays, and it's so preposterous that like just concentrate on like making your brand, you know what I mean? And you know, you look at things like the views count on YouTube or like the likes, right? I have friends that are like, they drive themselves crazy when they post an image and they're just like, yo, this isn't getting enough likes. Like, I need to delete it now. I'm like, why are you going to delete it? It's dope. He's like, no, it's not getting enough, like, you know, what's the word?
Engagement.
Engagement. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, publisher.
All about engagement.
Yeah, and then they get all like, you know, like hyperactive about it. And that's sad to me that like you can't just feel like, yo, I want to put this out there. Maybe people don't get it, but I feel like it deserves to be out there. Like that notion is, there's a lot of peer pressure to like stomp that out nowadays.
But on the other hand, the Panda is really something that came from Instagram.
Yes, that's true.
Right? So it's not so bad.
That's the plus side, right? Yeah. That the people can speak, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
the Panda was definitely born. The Panda would not have happened if it wasn't for Instagram.
Does everyone know what I'm talking about? Do they need to hear the story? Yeah, everyone's nodding. All right. They all right.
We have to tell it.
Move on, Steve. So that's where you're at with the podcast. But then also when we look at sort of where sneakers are and streetwear is now.
Yeah.
And speaking of social media, and you made a post recently about American Eagle working with Urban Necessities.
Yeah.
And you weren't particularly happy about it.
No.
Okay, do you want to talk through that?
Yeah, so this happened just last week, so this is really fresh in my mind. There's I don't know if you have, do you have American Eagle here?
No.
It's like the Gap.
Right, which we also don't have, but I think...
Oh, you don't have the Gap
no.
here?
We're living
What
good.
do you have? Cotton On?
Yeah,
This whole thing was sponsored by Cotton On. They paid me $1 million to say a Cotton On, like at some point, yes.
Cotton On by Sakai collab.
Okay, so American Eagle is a retail chain in America that is like Cotton On, right? It's like the Gap, whatever. And one day, I'm walking by this store, and I see the Pigeon Dunks, this one and the black one, set front and center in the window, right? And I'm like, what the, like, can you imagine? Like, can you imagine Cotton On? And then you walk by and you just see, like, the hottest drop of the year. You'd be so, like, I was confused as fuck, right? And then, like, so I'm like, oh, maybe they went out of business and, like, Nike SB opened the store here, right? I didn't know. So I go around the corner and then I look at the billboards, right? And they have these huge billboards on the side of the building. And it's like they had the Lobster Concepts dunk. And then they had the We the Best DJ Khaled Jordans, right? So they had these big, beautiful photos and then American Eagle logo, like under it. And I was like, what on earth is going on? So then I had to Google American Eagle sneakers, like it's just Googling. And what happened was American Eagle invested in and partnered with a sneaker reseller, like a fairly, I guess, famous one that I didn't know about, but it's called
Urban Necessities.
Urban Necessities. Urban Necessities has a big following. They're known. And they either collaborated with them, partnered with them, or invested in them, whatever. It's none of my business. I don't care. But they basically brought them in and said, okay, so in the front of the store, we're going to be selling, you know, $20 jeans and T-shirts. In the back, we're going to be selling Yeezys and Fear of Gods and Pigeon Dunks. And if you want to see Pigeon Dunks, you have to walk through all of these jeans and T-shirts and then come and see this, which, you know, it's fine. And I don't have any malice towards the founder of the thing. And I think, you know, I did this Instagram post where I was a little bit irate and I sort of did a Kanye rant and I wrote like a long caption and I did this thing. And I thought I worded it in a way where it was like clear that American Eagle was in the wrong. But a lot of people in social media today stop reading after the first sentence because that's the maximum they can like retain, right? They're like, one sentence, that's it, okay, I'm done. Now here comes my judgment, you know? So a lot of people thought that I was actually anti-reselling or anti-urban necessities or anti the fact that a big company is buying a little company, which I'm not against any of those things. I'm actually all for reselling. I'm for entrepreneurs selling out. I'm all for selling out, right? What I don't like is that this publicly traded company that does $4 billion a year, that has 25,000 employees, is taking other people's literal intellectual property. Like DJ Khaled owns We the Best, like outright. And they're taking that thing and they're putting it on a poster, like a huge poster, and then their logo's under it. So there's like, there's definite bait and switch happening. There's like there's deception happening.
Right. So it's not the fact that they're selling the sneakers in the store, it's the fact that they're co-branding it effectively.
Using it as the carrot to bring it in, right? And so I was arguing, like, so that means if they worked with like a handbag reseller, they can just take like a Louis Vuitton logo and then put the American Eagle logo under it. Like there has to be rules. And people, and I know this law, people were saying that, no, once it's been bought, once the item has been transacted and bought, the buyer can essentially do whatever they want with it. That's true.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's reselling, right? But I think when you start putting it on marketing elements, you know, there's a gray line that maybe because of the newness of resale, there isn't a law for this yet.
Right.
You know, so I just wanted to raise the point. And I brought this up to Nike, and they were like my guy at Nike was like, dude, we have like an inner office chat that is called legal with all the lawyers on it. This shit, like, this is lighting up the legal channel right now, you know what I mean? So like, I don't know what they're gonna do. They're probably gonna try to send a letter or do something, but like, I talked to my lawyer, they were like, Jeff, this is not a fight that you wanna have with American Eagle, but you can say what you want on social media and you know, see who picks it up, and a lot of news outlets picked it up. I've seen podcasts have this be the talking point of it, so it's good. People are talking about it, and I think it's wrong. I think it's super wrong, you know? Yeah, it's like, I'll give you another flip side example. Like, like for instance, I've always wanted to work with Hello Kitty. Right? Hasn't happened yet.
I'd be down for that.
Yeah, Hello Kitty is owned by a company called Sanrio, right? And in order to work with Hello Kitty and Sanrio, you have to pay them a lot of money. It's like a licensing deal. Now, if I said, you know what, fuck that, I'm not gonna do that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the biggest collector of Hello Kitty, and I'm gonna collaborate with the collector of Hello Kitty. But on my Instagram, I'm gonna have a big Hello Kitty logo, and then my logo, and I'm gonna say, we work with this collector of Hello Kitty. Hello Kitty would sue the shit out of me, like instantaneously. Yeah. So how is that any different than what American Eagle is doing?
Okay, that's
and so that's my point. And now it's become a real big issue because, as you might know, like LVMH has invested in stadium goods, and Foot Locker has just made a massive investment into GOAT, right? So now you have traditional retailers buying up these resellers, you know? And so what does this mean? Does this mean that in the future, you go to a Foot Locker and because Balenciaga and Acne Studios is selling on GOAT, now because Foot Locker owns them, they could just put Balenciaga in the window of Foot Locker? If this rule stands, then that means they can. And Balenciaga has no say. They just have to be like, oh, I guess we're in Foot Locker now because they bought GOAT. There's no, I'm not even like being an asshole. Like it's true, yeah, right? Like it's crazy talk. Yep. Yeah. So I can't wait to see how this all plays out. You know.
Yeah. Foot Locker purchased GOAT for $100 million.
Yeah.
And Stadium Goods was $250 million.
Yeah. And these are minor investments. They're not the majority investments. Like they're not the majority shareholder. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Switching gears. I would like to just get your thoughts on, you know. We talk about the scene, the sneaker community, these sort of things these days. But when we talk about, you know, Balenciaga and this kind of thing, I feel that people don't really have a lot of unique style these days, as opposed to perhaps 10 to 15 years ago. Because when we go to sneaker swap meets and that sort of thing, or even resellers, back in the day, we used to go there and you'd see some Air Raids, some Air Assaults, some Revolutions, and you would just pick and choose whatever you thought was kind of a fresh fit. Yeah. But these days, everything is either a Yeezy or an Off-White collab, or maybe someone's got a Fear of God to sell.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's enough variety now. I mean, even if you just look at this store and you look at the amount of options that you have, I think if you want to be an individual, that choice is for you. Like, you could wear those Sambas behind you. I guarantee you no one else in the room will have those Sambas on, right?
Yeah, facts.
Yeah. And I think it just depends on where your mentality is at. And this is your second chance to donate to the Hare Krishnas now, in case you missed the first drop.
It's a really good opportunity, guys.
It depends on what you want. You know, for me and the era that I came from, nothing infuriated me more than if I walk into a room and someone else is wearing the shoes that I'm wearing. Like that, 100%. I will go home immediately. Like I'll just leave the party right away.
Just wear orange LeBrons. No problems.
Right? No, but I mean, there's just, I don't know if that's is a generational thing or something, but like now it seems like if you go into a room and like everyone's wearing like, you know, Inertia Yeezys, it's kind of cool. Like you're like in a clique and you're like, oh, we are the ones who got this and no one else could, like us, the 8 of us have this thing and now we're like a crew, you know? So maybe there is like a little bit of like clique mentality that's happening where like there's like the Off-White gang, the Yeezy gang, you know? And then there's like the gang that just wears Chuck Taylors, you know, they don't give a fuck, but they really do give a fuck, you know what I mean? Like, so I think it's just that. But for me, I'm still about like, true originality, which is just individuality. I'm always about wearing like I just want to wear the thing that no one else is wearing, you know. And so it's just to each his own. But I think the great thing about sneaker culture now is even outside of Nike and Adidas, you know, you have so many brands. You mentioned the luxury brands, but even like, you know, performance brands. Like right now, I'm totally feeling like Solomon S Lab, right? Or like Hoka, or I just bought a pair of Sauconys today online, like retail. They just did a collab with Dunkin' Donuts. No shit, like Dunkin' Donuts Saucony. Look it up. You're gonna. They're like laughing at me right now.
I didn't know. I would totally.
Yeah, but like I just bought them for retail, and like I'm just all about sort of like trying to maneuver into different spots.
Right.
But no disrespect if like you love Off-White or you love Yeezys, but like I do think that there is something happening, and I'm just gonna say my opinion. This is totally my own opinion, but I do feel like something is happening where those most coveted shoes, right, from a dollar standpoint and a scarcity standpoint and a resale standpoint, those coveted shoes, when you walk into certain pockets of culture, like Melbourne, like this particular neighborhood, Soho, LA, Berlin, Tokyo, I feel like 80% of the people are wearing Off-Whites or Yeezys, right? So now it's like, wow, the most coveted thing is now the most general thing. And it's almost like if you just wore like the corniest Adidas Samba, you would be the actual cool person. It's this thing where it's like, it's almost like, you know, like the VIP room at a nightclub. Everyone wants to go to the VIP room, right? But like when you get there, if like everyone is in the VIP room, then actually the cool place is like the regular dance floor. You know, so like that's 100%. A little bit of what's happening right now. Like everyone's allowed in the VIP room now. Yeah.
But you mentioned the Balenciagas and so on just now, and moving into the future. Right now, obviously, the crossover with sneakers culture and high fashion is such a hot thing.
Yeah.
Do you think this is going to continue where you see it going? So it's not gonna peter off.
No, it's a gateway drug. You know, a lot of kids get into luxury brands through the footwear. You know, the Gucci is a huge example of that. So they get into it, and then they start buying from the feet up. So it's like, that's why I call it the gateway drug to get customers in, you know? And for a lot of luxury brands, it's like making the whole brand. Like,
I just wish the first hit was free.
Right? Good analogy.
Thanks.
But yeah, I don't think it's going away. It's not going away at all.
Because, you know, we've got Virgil now, who's transcended sneakers and now is working at LV. So not only is high fashion profiting from, you know, ordinary sneakerheads like us because we're that gateway drug, but also they're using people that have come from sneaker culture to make their brand hot.
Yeah.
So that's also something that you think will continue?
Yes, I think Virgil is like in a very amazing moment in time for so many reasons, for street culture, sneaker culture, people of color, minorities. Like he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders. And a lot of people on the other side of that fence, meaning like the suits, the corporations, the shareholders, are all anxiously waiting to see how this pays off, right? Because it's a risky proposition for a brand like LV to do something like that. And to them, all they care about is the money. If it makes money, they'll hire all the black people they can get. Like, come on in, you know, like, yeah. But if it doesn't make money, they'll be like, I told you so. I told you we should have got a French guy in there. You know, so like, that's what it all comes down to. So I think he's at a very interesting moment, you know? And like just 2 weeks ago, this Michael Jackson thing happened where, you know, Virgil decided to hang his hat on this whole collection inspired by Michael Jackson. And then the Netflix documentary, or I don't know if it was Netflix, but a documentary came out about Michael Jackson, sort of like just, you know, throwing him under the bus. And then now LV has to like cancel that whole entire MJ collection, you know? And in my mind, I'm just like, I know Virgil was just trying to do the right thing. And I know in another room, there's these old white guys in suits saying like, I told you so. This is what happens when you let them do what they want to do. See? I know that's happening, you know, and I feel bad for him because it's like, how the hell was he supposed to know that, you know? So yeah, he's got a lot on his shoulders, and the whole world's waiting. The other big thing that the whole world is waiting on is Supreme, right? Supreme just got invested in. Everyone knows Carlyle Group, $1 billion valuation, $500 million investment into Supreme. These people that invested in Supreme want to get their money back in 5 years, right? So that means in 5 years, Supreme has to be on their way to doing $1 billion. What happens when Supreme does $1 billion? Does everyone in the world still want to wear Supreme? Because now you're in Cotton On level,
That's
right?
What
You're
I was
in the
say.
Gap. You're in the Gap, Cotton On, and American Eagle level at those numbers. So when everyone is wearing Supreme, do you still want to go out and wait in line for Supreme? That's like it's defying the whole supply versus demand knowledge that we've known about for centuries. If Supreme can somehow pull off being $1 billion company and have everyone still waiting in line for them, then they've sort of flipped the whole supply and demand thing on its head. And I hope they do it because it'll just reset everything. But I think the whole world is waiting to see how that pans out also.
Could Supreme make that kind of turnover with their current business model, or will they, in your opinion, would they need to expand?
Yeah, they'll need to expand 100%. But like maybe if they do it strategically with their own stores, like if they still don't do wholesale, they still only open their own stores. And maybe they've done the calculation where there's enough cities in this world that deserve a little Supreme store. And if you sprinkle the entire earth with like a little Supreme shop, then they can get to $1 billion.
Right.
Yeah.
Supreme Melbourne coming soon?
I'm sure that, yeah.
Jeff said so.
Supreme Adelaide's coming soon. What are you talking about? Well, ouch.
Very good, man. Very good. All right. Okay. I would like to know, in 2017, we saw the pigeon dunk come back, the black pigeons. 2018, Pandas. Mm-hmm. 2018 also, we had no, that was this year, sorry. But we've had Concepts, we've had the Tiffany dunks come back.
Yeah.
A lot of people look back at that 04, 05, 06 period when the SB dunks were really popping as really like the golden era of the whole sneaker scene. Is that something that we're about to experience again?
The resurgence of the dunk in particular? Yeah, I mean, I think it's evident. It's already here, Also, like Travis Scott has just been like constantly rocking SB dunks. There's like something happening where it's definitely coming back. And I think it's really hard to put like a mathematical calculation on like when something expires and when something comes back. It really comes down to gut feeling. And for some reason, like I feel good wearing dunks again. There was like a long period of time where I couldn't put a pair of dunks on. It was like oversaturation. And so I put them away for like many, many years. And then sort of like, I think about 3 years ago, I started putting them on again. It was actually Atmos released a COJP two-tone dunk. It was like sort of like the Hoya's colors, but like reversed. And when they brought that out, I put it on, and I was like, wow, like I can wear dunks again. And it's been a while since I've worn dunks, And then so something started to happen, and like Travis started to wear it, and then Nick Diamond started to bring his back out, and then the releases started coming, and then now Nike SB started doing this like the orange label series. Where it's like just these core dunks that are only available in core skate shops, and they look great too. I think that was a genius move on their part to like get people back into the core skate shops. So I think it's definitely on its way back. The question is, with social media and the internet now, how fast does the comeback immediately become expired again? So like usually comebacks last like a year and a half. Like for instance, the dad shoe is like a trend that was sort of born online that is still going. And I know a lot of companies are like, they're sort of like, should we get on the dad shoe bandwagon? Because maybe it'll end like next week, and it takes us 18 months to make a shoe. So like, when do we jump on this bandwagon? And the dunk could be that too. Who knows? It's kind of like the Timberland 6-inch boot. Like I feel like the Timberland 6-inch wheat boot is also having a moment. Like I see people wearing that in a fashion way, not in a hip-hop like gangster way necessarily, but like they're wearing really nice tailored clothes and then like 6-inch Timbs, and I'm like, ooh, he's working it. Like that's a good look, So I think they're gonna have a moment too, but it might just expire.
So do you think that that's sort of a problem of the times though, is that there's not really an ability to have niche markets and that sort of thing these days, and subcultures, because they just get consumed so quickly? And
I don't think that's a problem. I actually think it's a benefit. I think that because of the internet, for instance, going back to Timberland or going back to the dunk, there's always going to be now enough of a pocket of humans that are into it and have access to it that like there'll never be a thing that you can make where it's like, wow, that was a complete flop. Like with all the access we have with Sneakers app and the internet and social media, you could not find 10 people who wanted to buy that thing that you made. Like that's actually hard to do, Like I think you could find somebody to buy anything at this point, So it's like because of the access, there's so many clicks and niches now that you could pretty much like, if you look at camouflage or polka dot or stripes, like people try to say like, oh, camo's coming back in. Like camo is happening somewhere on planet Earth at any certain point. Like it's sort of going in and out of fashion at any given moment. And I think that goes the same for Dunks or Timberlands or whatever.
All right, thanks very much. So once again, thank you to Hype DC for tonight. If you guys
thank you.
look in the bag, this is my Oprah moment. There's socks. There's also a voucher which you can use at any time at Hype. Well, there's probably an expiry date on it, but you can use it now as well. The store will be open until 9 p.m. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you once again
Thanks
to Hype
for coming
DC.
out.
Thank you for
Thank you,
Jeff.
Melbourne.
Let's give it up.
Thank you so much.